It involves the game of football, the NFL. I think the media has done a horrendous job in the last decade and change building up these kids coming out of college to just tear them down when they don't do what they need to do in that first year. You talk about to guys like Trevor Lawrence, you talk about guys like Caleb Williams, who they're building up to be this prime a prospect that the NFL has ever seen. And then if he doesn't show up and show out, what's going to happen? They're going to throw him out right in the trash and bring him on to the next person. Going to the next person. They giving these expectations to all these prospects. And they're young. They're kids. Just say they're talented and let us see them on the field. Just say this kid has a tremendous talent. He could be something. He has potential. But they don't use words like potential no more. They go, this kid is the greatest ever. This kid is the greatest college prospect ever. He's the greatest college football player ever. It's just like, let these kids develop. Let these kids play. Because now there's a rush to get these kids on the field as soon as possible, as soon as they touch the NFL, instead of them learning. Instead of them understanding how fast the game is. Understanding how fast the speed is. Like, you have to take a driver's test before you get your license. Like you got to be able to take your time. But the media doesn't allow kids to do that anymore. They can't come in here and learn and develop. They have to already know how. They have to already do it. Listen, you spent 20, 30 million on your first round pick. You got to do it on the field. If you can't relieve it, you're done. It's craziness. It doesn't make sense. The expectations they put on these college kids to come in there and automatically just be somebody instead of learning to be somebody. Sometimes you got to follow before you can lead. Not everyone can just walk in the lead. You can't be the head of the pack. Not every time. It don't work like that. And that's my take for 99 cents, man. It's just the media, man. They're hurting these kids. They're hurting their potential. You're demolishing franchises left and right because they're listening to you, and clearly it hasn't been working. But that's my take for now.
Look, man, salute to Zay right there. That take was months ago during the summertime. I know me and Zay don't always agree on takes and stuff like that, but man, that was a good take. Clearly, it speaks to what we're, going through right now with Caleb and the expectations, Bryce Young. That was a good take. It's very relevant today. Zach, I would love to just continue on that. Is it time to reset Caleb Williams' expectations after the Bears lost to the Texans on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, Lil, and I agree. That's looking like a great take by Zay. I think it is, but, and I know I'm the one that hyped up Caleb Williams in the offseason, right? And I loved everything the Bears did this offseason. I thought that he was going to come into the league right away, and I wasn't expecting him to do what C.J. Stroud did last year, but I expected him to be pretty close, and a lot of that had to do with the situation he was walking into, right? I loved what Ryan Poles did, adding Keenan Allen, adding Rome Odunze. We saw this was a team that won 7 games last year with Justin Fields, and they upgraded at quarterback. And I still think overall that was the correct move, despite the fact that, hey, shout out to Justin Fields and the Steelers getting off to a 2-0 start. But I just think I might have overrated the situation around Caleb Williams and really the offensive line. Like, Will, watching that game on Sunday night, Caleb Williams didn't even have a chance. As soon as the ball was being snapped, immediately there was a Texans defender in his face. And I will say, I understand he didn't play the greatest game. It was certainly an upgrade over how he looked in week number 1. But I think he earned some street credit. Like, the Texans were just hitting him and hitting him and hitting him and hitting him again. And to Caleb's credit, he got up every time. Got right back up, and somehow, some way, the Bears did have a chance to win the game. They had the ball down 6, just like Atlanta did last night in the final few minutes. But I think if you're the Chicago Bears right now, your number one priority needs to be figuring out this offensive line, because it's just like watching Caleb Williams at USC. He doesn't have a chance with all that pressure in his face right away. I think Houston's defense is very good, and D'Amico Ryans had a great game plan that really flummoxed Matt Eberflus, Shane Waldron, and that Bears staff. But I just think, for me, I overestimated the situation Caleb Williams was in. Like, the offensive line should not be this bad, especially when you spent a top 10 pick on Darnell Wright. You brought in some guys in free agency. Like, Ryan Poles was an offensive lineman when he played in the NFL. I don't understand how the offensive line could look that bad again. And I know Houston's defense is very good, but look, I still think Caleb Williams is going to be a very good player as the season goes on. And I still think this Bears team is going to be a playoff team. But I think in terms of the individual season, the individual numbers, Caleb probably isn't going to have the season I expected, just because the situation isn't as great as I realized around him. And I'm not trying to make excuses. Look, Caleb has been subpar in his first 2 games. It hasn't been great, but I do expect him to be much better starting this upcoming week against the Indianapolis Colts. That's a very soft defense. I expect him to at least throw his first touchdown pass by week number 3. But I just think I overestimated the situation around him, and it's not as good as I had originally thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think to answer the question, it is time to reset expectations. Me, I was always the neutral guy, here on the show. For those of y'all watching the show, the 3 of us, me, Zach, and Zay, Zach was he's going to be a top 12 quarterback in the NFL this year. Zay was as you see in that clip, pump the brakes, homie. Okay, the offensive line. Okay, expectations, you pump the brakes. And I was always a neutral guy. Like, yeah, I see where Zay is coming from. I see where Zach is coming from. I'm in the middle. And I think, we have to reset those expectations. I think Bill Belichick was right in his criticism of Ryan Poles and how he built his roster. We looked at the shiny toys, the Keenan Allen trade, the extension he gave DJ Moore, the running back, DeAndre Swift, Gerald Everett. We look at the shiny toys and the overspending, but the cheapness that he had when it came to his offensive line. Now, where I disagree partially with Bill Belichick is that it's not that he didn't invest in the offensive line. He did. He drafted guys, but he was very cheap with those, additions. And the one guy he overpaid, Nate Davis, is the most overrated one on the line. He's unplayable. The one guy he overpaid is unplayable. That's a mistake. And we have to look at that. That's why the Texans with D'Amico Ryans was able to blitz Caleb, and every time they blitzed Caleb, they gave him trouble and fits. And when they decide to play zone, the very few times they decided to play zone, he was able to have success. So you look at the offensive line, Danielle Wright got tore out the frame by Danielle Hunter, Danielle Hunter, excuse me. Will Anderson took over the game as well, and they just had no answers for those bullies up front, and that's why Caleb wasn't able to get in sync much. I thought that he kind of threw some balls that were questionable. The speed of the game is different, and that's where the learning curve comes into play, because it's not college where you can play that backyard style of football where you could just run over the yard and make throws that you think you can make in the NFL because the windows are tighter. That was evident with that DJ Moore throw that he had up the sideline that was picked off, and another throw that was picked off. I believe he had 2 interceptions in the game. The throw looked open, but the defender got to the ball. That's the speed of the game. It's a learning curve, and that's why we have to take those things in consideration and not go off of the year that CJ Stroud on the other side had his rookie year. I think we do this a lot. We see a trend, or we think it's a trend, and we like, this is going to be the new trend. No, it's not. There's a reason why it doesn't happen so often, that we have a RG3, that we have a CJ Stroud rookie years like this. Oh my God, they ready to play. They're amongst the elite. It's not going to happen all the time because every situation is different. And we underestimated the offensive line. And clearly, if you look at the Lions and how they're able to have success with their team, is literally built off the offensive line with guys like Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, guys that can bully you up front, that you can run your running backs on their side to open those gaps for them to have sustainable yards per carry. That's how the Bears should have built their team. You build your team from the trenches. We don't go shopping and go for the expensive car and the expensive, everything. No, you got to start with the necessities, okay, before we go to the replaceable resources. And Ryan Poles didn't do that, and that's why you have Caleb Williams out here running for his life, getting sacked. And I don't think that is fixable this year. I really don't. Like, how could you fix a bad offensive line unless you're Shane Waldron and you have these schematic scheme protections that you have where you could literally help Caleb get a couple of seconds to throw the ball and find an open guy. But I don't think this is fixable, and I think we need to reset those expectations.
So I'm happy you mentioned Shane Waldron, because there was a point I wanted to make on him. And look, I liked the hire at the time. This is a guy that worked for Sean McVay with the Rams. We saw what he did when he went to Seattle with Geno Smith. But I just have a feeling we could look back on the Bears' decision to hire Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator over Clint Kubiak, who went to the Saints. And I just wonder if that's a decision that we look back on and say, like, wow, that really cost the Bears. Because look, when you look at the Saints hiring Clint Kubiak, it's only 2 games, but this looks like the best offense in the league. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it up, but they just dropped 40 in back-to-back weeks. And Derek Carr, I know it's only through 2 games, but I never remember Derek Carr having as good of a 2-game stretch as he just did with the Saints. And keep in mind, Lil, the Saints offensive line, at least for me, was a huge priority. Ryan Ramczyk got hurt. We know that Derek Carr is not good under pressure, but that Saints offensive line has held up throughout the first 2 weeks, and that's going up against Dallas and Micah Parsons on Sunday. And I understand Houston's pass rush and their defense, and D'Amico Ryans is very good, but there's just no excuse for the offensive line to look that bad. I didn't like the Bears' offensive game plan at all. Matt Eberflus is challenging plays that have no chance of being overturned, and that cost them a timeout late. Like, I just think my main takeaway coming out of this game, I still think Caleb is going to be very good, and I'm still very high on him in his future, but I think I just overlooked the situation in Chicago. It's definitely not as good as I made it out to be.
So to my guy Kenny, I'm pretty sure my guy Kenny want me to come at you here harder than I am. I'm leaving you off the hook a little bit, but Zach, I got to be real with you, man. When we did our quarterback rankings, man, and I was the one that started the projections aspect of the list. We were just ranking these guys 1 through 32 with our own 2 eyes, who's the 32 best quarterback in football. But I realized a couple years ago that wasn't fun, because generally those things don't change drastically. Although you can argue, yes, the last couple years, let's have fun with it. Let's project into the future. I'm the one that did that. You didn't like it in the beginning, and then I started doing it, and then I stopped, and you took it from me, and I stopped. And the reason why I stopped doing that was because I was projecting, and guys wasn't meeting those expectations. Like, for example, Trevor Lawrence, for example, Justin Fields. And I got burnt a couple of times to the point where I'm like, you know what? I got to stop projecting. And you ran off with that. You projected Caleb Williams to be a top 15, I believe, number 12 quarterback in the NFL before you even got a sample. And that's where you get burnt. So now you know why I was a lot more trigger shy when creating my list this year. And you see for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the mistake for me, though, dude, is I just thought the situation was much better than it actually is. If I would have known the Bears' offensive line was this bad, I probably wouldn't have ranked him that high. And I guess that's where the risk comes in there. But like, dude, I'm not trying to make excuses for the guy. Look, he hasn't been great his first 2 starts. I do think he's going to be much better down the stretch, but dude, he didn't have a chance on Sunday night. The Texans defenders were in his face as soon as he caught the ball. And honestly, I'm telling you, if you're in that Bears locker room, we spoke about this a lot last year when we were having the debate about, what should the Bears do? Should they draft Caleb Williams? Should they keep Justin Fields? It looks like the whole locker room is really rallying around Justin Fields, especially when they started to play better late in last year. I think that Caleb Williams just sitting in the pocket and just taking hit after hit after hit and getting up each and every time. And again, the Bears, the one thing about the Bears too, their defense might be better than I even realized.
That's good.
Yeah. Houston was the better team from start to finish. It really felt like they dominated that game. Yet somehow the Bears defense played well enough where the offense did have a chance late to go try and win that game. I think the fact that Caleb stuck in the pocket, kept on getting hit, kept on getting back up, he showed his toughness, which is great. Keep in mind, that was a question with him going into the league. How does he deal with adversity? How does he deal how does he act when things aren't really going his way? I do think if you're in that Bears locker room, the one positive to come out of this game is, okay, our quarterback's pretty tough. And I think that gets him some credit in that locker room. Again, the number one priority for this team has to be figuring out the offensive line. Because I still believe, Will, when Keenan Allen comes back and this offensive line starts to block, hopefully they figure that out. I do think he's going to look a lot better than he has the first 2 weeks.
I mean, salute to my guy, Dujane. Salute to my guy, Kenny, chiming in here. My last point is when you look at the defense of Chicago, you brought them up. I want to expand on that. The last 2 weeks, they've done their job. They won week 1 single-handedly with the defensive plays that they made on the ball and special teams. And in this game, this week, obviously they didn't win this week, so I may have misspoken there. I don't know what I said before that. It just my brain is just thing. But this week they kept them in the game. They gave them 8 possessions in the second half. Like, when you tell me a team has 8 offensive possessions in the second half of the game, that don't even sound right. That's a lot of possessions. We saw last night the Falcons only have 3, 4 at most second half possessions because of all that time that was chewed. Your defense gave you 8 possessions, and they wasn't able to do nothing. Okay, 4 out of the 8 possessions ended in 3 plays or fewer, 3 punts and 1 INT. So they did absolutely nothing with those second chance opportunities and third chance and fourth chance opportunities that the Bears defense gave them. That's a bad sign. And when you want to talk about Caleb and end that Caleb more individually, I think it's around him. I think it's more around him than it is him. I think the offensive line got to be better. I think the play calling has to be better. I think
receivers have to get healthy. That's another
receivers got to get healthy. Keenan Allen, we underestimate Keenan Allen and how having that guy on third down that could always get open and find the spots in the zone and always find a way to get open. You missed a guy like that. Clearly, he was missed in that game. And also, you have to look at the situation where, both Phils and Caleb was dealing with the same thing here. I mean, you see that viral picture of both of these guys looking up at the stadium ceiling, because they are running for their life out there. Justin Fields was sacked 99 times in, I believe, the last 2 years. Okay, 99 times the last 2 years that he was on the Bears. Okay, now, credit to Caleb, he's not holding the ball as long as Justin Fields does in the pocket. He actually was getting the ball out quick, especially on the drive that he looked decent in. He was getting the ball out quick, reading the field right. But at the same time, you got to protect that man. You got to give him some help up front. And I don't think that's fixable this year. And that's why I think we need to reset those expectations that we had, or that you had more directly.
Yeah, I'm just curious, man, because look, I'll say this too. I think the 2 defenses the Bears faced in weeks 1 and 2 are very good. I think the Titans might have the most underrated defense in the league. Saw them up close against the Jets this week. And then we know how good Houston is with D'Amico Ryans. I just have a funny feeling Caleb Williams is going to bounce back this week against the Colts. Like, you go from playing Houston to the Colts, like, that's a big drop off. The Colts defense is not good. They just lost the game to Malik Willis. We saw what CJ Stroud did to them week 1. If Caleb has another really bad game coming out of week 3, that's when I'll be very concerned, but I'm expecting a much better effort from him and the Bears offense.
I just want to give one point on the other side with the Texans. We headed for time here. I want to make sure we get our next topic in because I have a lot to say, and I'm pretty sure you do as well. But I just want to highlight one point. I'll let you respond. On the Texans side, I would love to give D'Amico Ryans a lot of credit. This guy's legitimate. I understand we like the offensive minds, and they get a lot of credit, the McVays, the LaFleurs, the Kyle Shanahans, but we got to give these defensive innovators some props. D'Amico Ryans is one hell of a coach. Should have been in my top 10. I regret automatically not putting him in there. He'll find his way next time we do that list to be definitely in my top 10. He transformed the Texans defense with the combination of coaching and drafting. Remember a couple years ago, one defense was obsolete, the worst in the league. Literally, you can't even run the ball on them. Jonathan Taylor had about 3 yards per carry last week. And clearly, the Bears did not get the running game going in this game. They stifled them. They got some dogs up front. A secondary is pretty good. This team is good. Got to give credit to D'Amico and company.
Is it a hot take to say they might have the best defense in the league? Because
it's not.
I think they might. And that's the scary thing about this Texans team, right? Like, we know how good CJ Stroud is. We know how good Nico Collins is. And the defense is better than the offense in my mind, which is the really scary thing about this Texans squad. They're the real deal. And CJ Stroud, man, just sitting in the pocket, making those throws to Nico Collins, to Tank Dell, to Schultz. Like, man, he is unreal. And I love watching him play.
The Texans are for real, folks. That's why I'm going to leave it. They are.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.